Warning: the following podcast has been rated listener R due to strong language, violent situations, drug references, sexual innuendos, and who knows what else. Listener discretion is advised. With that being said, hang on, sugar tits, because we're about to get wobbled.
What is going on, guys? This is Clayton Wobbled again with episode 5 of the Let's Get Wobbled podcast. Today, again, we're doing something a little different. Gonna get a hold of Stevens again, see if we can get another audio podcast recorded with him. But I just figured today's my day off and had some other stuff that I was getting into and decided that I was just gonna stop by Dad's place and talk with him, see what's going on. He's like, why don't we record a podcast? So I'm sitting here with Dad, aka Big Mike, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself a little bit, and then we'll jump right into this podcast. What's going on, big guy?
Oh, not much. I've been hanging out, not doing a whole lot. I Just a little bit about myself. I grew up in the country. I've lived country most of my life. Um, I went into the military right out of high school. When my tour was up, I I've been doing odd jobs and a lot of work, a lot of whatever I could get into. I mean, I've driven truck. I've delivered appliances. I've worked at the same place that you did for 12 years. I I've held many different jobs, but um, being wheelchair bound now, um, of course I can't work. I had to have back surgery, had surgery on my spinal cord, and that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and a lot of things that I want to touch base on you with. In a previous episode, me and Stevens talked about how important it is to have a plan, or at least you don't have to have a plan right when you get out of school, but you want to have some kind of bearing as to what you want to do. Whether that plan falls through or not, at least you have a plan. So, was it your plan to immediately go into the military once you got out of high school, or did you have something else in mind?
Yeah, I had actually signed up on the delayed entry program my junior year of high school, so I knew when I graduated I was going straight in. Um, and at that time, I had was seriously considering making a career out of that. Um, but I had a few instances with my back um, in the military, and it just I mean I loved it. I loved going around the world. I did a tour in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I did a tour in Okinawa, Japan. I love the travel. I love the life, the military life. But I just, like I said, I just health wise, I just didn't think that I would be able to make a career out of it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, feel that way too. Once they get in, I've heard a lot of people say, this is something I want to do long term. Then you get your years in and just decide that it's really not. It's not something that people want to do long term. You did your time. You're ready to get out and move on and do the other things you wanted to try to have planned for. And you also mentioned the back surgery and having to go through that with you. I mean, I didn't experience what you experienced, but trying to help you out and do what I can for you. I'm sure it was a long process for sure, getting everything going and being in the surgery rooms and the recovery process. And we're doing this podcast now. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning, so we're not exactly getting wobbled on the Let's Get Wobbled podcast. So I'm sorry for failing you guys, but a little too early to have a beer, and we're inside of an apartment, so it's kind of hard to smoke cigars and stuff in here. But we do with what we can. But tell me a little bit about the back surgery and the recovery process that you went through.
Well, I had fallen, had slipped a disc in my back, and they knew it was going to be a long recovery, so I wound up in a nursing home. And while in the nursing home, my back just it seemed to be getting worse and worse. And I was complaining that I needed some relief. I had to get something done. I wasn't sure what, but something had to be done.
Yeah, I remember visiting you, and you were telling me that the pain pills they were giving you just wasn't even touching it anymore, and that just you could definitely tell something was wrong, but nobody knew what was wrong.
Yeah, it was. they took me up to OSU, um, and said that they thought with rehabilitation and medication that they could control the pain. And so they sent me back to the nursing home, and I think I was back maybe a week to 2 weeks, and it just progressively was getting worse and worse. And I told him, I said, something has to be done. Whatever you're doing is not working. So they sent me back to OSU, and they took me from the gurney to the table to do the CAT scan, and just laying on that table I was in so much pain I couldn't stand it. I was screaming. So they put me out and did the CAT scan, and when they took me out of the CAT scan, they took me straight into surgery. My spinal cord was getting eaten by an infection. So they took me into surgery, did a 6-hour surgery, um, and I was told afterwards that if I would have waited another week, that infection would have eaten clear through my spinal cord, and I would have been paralyzed for life. So thankfully, somebody, finally listened, um, and they took the steps to prevent me being paralyzed.
which is crazy to think too, because everybody tries to work through their aches and pains that they have, and you never really know what's going on until you get that professional opinion. But at first, the professional opinion was just to suck it up and try to push through it. And then somehow, some way, they finally saw what was really causing you the problem, and it wasn't just a push through it kind of thing. It was like, well, if you'd have done what we told you to do the first time, that, that would have fucked you up real bad,
Yeah.
So it's crazy to believe. And to get back on this new episode, we're going to go ahead and jump into the new content for you guys. Dad and I were sitting here talking, and before I was setting everything up, we were trying to figure out a topic, and I was telling him about how nice it is to have some days off and have a little bit of break away from what I do now and what you used to do. And I was even telling Stevens there at the last episode, you didn't originally, years prior, when you worked where I do now, you originally didn't want me to go in. You said it just wasn't really the place. It wasn't, something that you wanted to see me go through. And now working in it almost a year, I've almost got my year in now. I can kind of see where you were coming from, especially at that time. But it's like I told Stevens, I said it's a really good job. The pays really well. The benefits are really good. I can see where people turn away from that place and just don't ever want to go back. But really, it's not a horrible job, and I do seem to like it. And it seems like something I can definitely make a career out of if I ever decide to stay and continue on. But I was sitting here telling you that I'm getting ready to go on a 12-day stretch with no days off because I have to do this training, and they asked me to volunteer some overtime, which is nice. I don't ever mind the overtime, but it's also nice to have time off too. And you had mentioned about when is a good time to take off, not only for your physical health but for your mental health too. And a lot of people, I think, have different aspects on what their mental health is. I'm not one, if I'm having a bad morning or just not feeling it, it's one of those things that I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna push through it. I'm fine. I get into work and I'll be fine once I get in there and get moving. But it really is, if you're going through some shit, it's good to take time off from your place of work. I don't think that it's good that somebody told me once, when you sign up to do a job, you're signing up to put in your 40 hours or however many hours they ask you to work. You're not signing up to volunteer every day for overtime when they're short staffed. You don't sign your life away just to pick up a job. And I think it's very important. And I think you had a good topic about it. So I'll let you run with it a little bit and then I'll jump in with it.
Well, just real quick before we start that, I wanted to let you know that it wasn't that I didn't think you could handle the job. Why I didn't really want you in that line of work. I've seen some things that a lot of people wouldn't be able to handle. I've experienced things that people really shouldn't have to see. And knowing now that, with you being a firefighter and seeing some of the things you've seen in that line of work, I believe that you can handle it. I mean, I've always told you that I'm here to talk if you need to talk, because I've experienced some of those things. Um, but yeah, when back on the topic, it is good to. I mean, you chose that job, and people rely on you. People rely on you not only to do your job, but to watch their back while they do yours, or while they do theirs. Um, I believe that your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Yes, you get time off, you get days off, but like when I worked up there, the days off that I had was spent doing the things around the house that needed to be done that I didn't have time to do while I was at work.
Right, just trying to play catch up for 2 days so you can go in and put 5 more in.
Yeah,
If not
exactly.
more, if you volunteer your time and volunteer some of your days off too.
Yeah. And there's times where they make you work overtime. You don't have a choice.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I can't tell you. And my dad told me a long time ago that you're hired to do a job, but don't get buried in that life. Because, like as you said in a previous podcast about complacency in a relationship, you can get complacent in your own life.
Absolutely.
Um, you have to take there's times where you just have to take time just to even if it's for like a family function. Like when you kids were playing baseball and playing football and there was times where I couldn't make games. I couldn't because I had to work. Um, and I missed out on so much with you kids growing up. I mean, I tried my hand at coaching. I wasn't the greatest at it, but it gave me time with you kids outside of work. Um, just trying to, for my own sanity, trying to take a day off, and I was feeling guilty about it for a while, and realized what I earned that time off.
Right.
I mean, the job I had, I think, see, the difference between you and I when I started, they didn't give us any sick time, personal time, vacation time until you actually got your first year in and when you got off probation. And then all of a sudden they dropped 40 hours of personal, 40 hours of vacation, 40 hours of sick. Now you guys accrue that every pay period.
Right.
Um, so that first year I couldn't take a day off.
Which I think is extremely important too, because I mean, I can understand why they would want you to get through your probation period before you started using your time off. But we talk about how valuable time off is. It is extremely valuable. And I think it's funny that you mentioned too, and I'm just now picking this up that I never thought before. You worked where I work now, so I see what goes on in an 8-hour day. So you would put in an 8-hour day, get off work, and then turn around and coach. I remember you coached T-ball, like coach pitch year, and I think like our pony league team, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So to go through the 8 hours of what you had to deal with at work and then flip a whole switch and then deal with kids, that must have been extremely difficult to flip that switch and get into a whole different mindset.
It is when you deal with adults. I can't really say that they're all bad. I mean, I remember somebody telling me once that the only difference between you and I is that I got caught.
Yep, 100%.
And I mean, it's like you said, in your previous podcast about, speeding, you know, sometimes it's not a choice. I mean, people speed for many different reasons.
Correct.
I've actually caught myself speeding, not realizing I was speeding. I was just going with the flow of traffic. Now, that's not an excuse, but, you know, eh, at that time that I was speeding, I didn't get caught. And there's times where many people make decisions in their life to do something that they know they shouldn't be doing, or they know they shouldn't have done, but they just never got caught at it. And then there's people out there who made a conscious decision to do something. It's just they got caught.
Right.
And it made me step back and look at things like, how many things have I done, or how many times have I done something that I could have been in trouble if I had gotten caught doing it.
Yeah.
But try to get back on the subject a little bit.
We bunny trail. It's gonna happen.
Yeah,
We
okay.
will eventually get to the finish line. You got to follow with us. Hang in there. We'll eventually get to that finish line.
Yeah, I just when coaching you guys, like I said, it was basically not only time to spend with you guys, but a way for me to get outside of my mundane life.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the time I spent with you. Yes, it was a total, turnaround, a total 180 to go from dealing with adults to dealing with kids. Now, granted, I enjoy dealing with you guys a lot more. Um,
It's easier when somebody's actually there to listen
yeah,
versus just
when
your
they're
words
listening to
bouncing
you,
off
paying
somebody. Yeah.
attention to you, and I mean, just like them, just like when I was a kid, a lot of things went in one ear and out the other. But with kids, if they're interested in the sport that they're in, yeah, they listen, and they try to make you proud. I mean,
I
they
mean,
want.
I'm listening, but at the same time, I'm still gonna be chasing butterflies in the outfield while playing
Mhm.
t-ball and trying to figure out who's watching me in the outfield when coach pitch. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I see that point now, and I think it would be cool to do as an adult now because, like you said, it would be a complete 180. You're heading one way, and you're dealing with adults every day, and then you have to flip a major switch because now you're dealing with kids, and it's not the same way that you deal with the adults. And Stevens and I were talking, and even you and I have talked about it. Even with you being out of that line of work for so long, you still have those things that they taught you to do at work, the ear hustling, the watching and observing other people to see what they're doing. And I think it's extremely important to somehow, some way, try to find a way to turn all that off and to let your mind and your body just recover, basically.
yeah. I remember when we would take you kids out, and I mean, before you guys even realize what goes on up there, um, we would go out to dinner, and I was the same way. I could not sit with my back to the door. Um, and now that you're in that position and I'm out of that position, um, I it's become a little bit easier for me. I mean, I still feel uncomfortable with my back to the door.
And I feel bad for putting you in that situation because I know that that's what you used to do. But now I'm the exact same way. And it's hard for you and I both to sit with our back, towards a wall or sitting watching the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean, and it's the reason it's become a little bit easier for me is because when I'm out with you, if we're sitting in a restaurant or something, I know what you're doing, and I know if something was to go down that you have my back. I mean, you're looking around, you're not always concentrating on the conversation we're having, but I know why. I mean, I know you're not dismissing me or dismissing, like, when you and Kristen go out. Um, I know you're not dismissing us. Um, you're doing exactly what I did, and I understand that. So it has become a little bit easier for me now. Now, if I'm ever out by myself, or if I'm out with somebody else and we're in a crowd, I'm still the same way.
Right.
I still try to back myself into a corner or put my back against the wall, and I'm ear hustling.
It's extremely hard. And I know we try to. Believe me when I say we try to turn those things off, but it's just not something that comes easy because you're forced to do it at the workplace.
Yeah.
Not because somebody's pointing down your throat and saying, "You have to do this." It's just one of those things that come naturally that you feel like you have to do while you're in that workplace, and it's extremely hard to shut it off from time to time when you're out with your family. And part of me feels bad for doing it, but the other part of me is like, this is just who I've become now. It's part of me, and it's how it's gonna be. I just need to accept it, and it'll be that way. It just, it's hard to explain if you've never been in those situations and stuff like that. But people who do work at the places that we do and the field that we do get it.
But yeah, I just there's times I felt like I was getting complacent, not only in my job but in my life, and I took advantage of the time that I had accrued to try to break that monotony. Like, uh, I've called off before and actually gone fishing just to break the monotony, just to get out of my own head and do something for me. I felt like, I mean, I look back when I was just a kid, and my mom was raising 3 kids on her own and was working 2 jobs, and she never, hardly ever had time for herself, and back then, the father was the main support of the family. He was the one that was working 2 and maybe 3 jobs while the mother stayed home and took care of the kids. And then, um, when I grew up, life it just didn't quite work out that way. I mean, in order to make it, most parents, the mother and the father, had to go out and work, um, just to get the necessities out of life. And so I give all the praise to single moms out there who are doing their best uh, to try to raise kids by themselves. Um, and sometimes it's next to impossible for them to take a day off and just do something for themselves.
Right, and not get caught up on the housework and shit that needs done, but just to take time off for your, like you said, mental health. It's not. I remember, I haven't talked to you about this off the podcast, but I I have a faint memory. It's been a long fucking time ago. But my birthday is in August, the beginning of August, and of course I wasn't in school yet at the time, but now seeing how hard it is for people in our profession to get time off. I remember being a kid and asking for my birthday if we could go out to the bowling alley. And I remember you were like, "Well, I don't really know. It's going to be hard to get a day off. It's hard for me to get the time off." And I remember feeling bummed about it because I was like, "Well, it's hard. I understand it's hard for him to get a day off. I mean, we haven't went bowling in a while." And me being a kid, I didn't understand that at the time. But I remember you did get the day off, and I remember spending the day with you bowling and how cool that was because I remember how hard you said it was going to be to get a day off. And now I see it. I see how hard it is. There's just some days that even though you may really want it off, there's just not a spot available for you to take off. It's extremely hard to get days off if you want some outside of your good days. It was difficult even now to try to pick a day where I'm like, you know what? I need this day just to relax and do me. Figure out what I want to do outside of that. And it's very important not only for your mental health, but even to avoid that complacency because you get in that rut and complacency kills. You get complacent, you start cutting corners, and that's in a sense that's where all your problem areas lies when complacency shows up.
Yeah, I
But it's like you said, it is very important to, if you're going through just some shit and it's just the work's wearing on you, and take that time off for, if even you don't have to go on a vacation. Nobody's telling you to pack your bags and go out for a week on vacation. It just that one day that you do you. If there's a movie that you want to see that's been out for a while and you just haven't had the chance, you've been buried in work and you're in that rut of life, it's never a bad thing to take that day and just recoup.
yeah, I agree. People there are people out there who feel selfish for taking that time, but like I said, I mean, if it's benefiting you, you shouldn't feel guilty about that. You shouldn't feel selfish to take time off for you.
Right, and it ties back into what I said earlier too. I know how short our shift is. So, if there's a vacation spot open, yeah, our shift's already short. We're already calling people for overtime. But they have to give that vacation spot up if somebody wants it. So, I mean, you're looking at it as, well, if I call off today, there's another guy they're going to have to freeze or another guy that's going to get called in for overtime. But at the same time, it's like you said, you've earned that time. And like I said, you signed up to work your job, to do your part. But when do you draw the line as to say, listen, I've done my part and it's just time to do some me shit? I do. I really think it's extremely important, and it is really hard to sometimes find that line in the sand of, because I've done that. I've looked at the schedule and I'm like, we're short. I could use a day off. I could use some comp time, but we're short. I'll go in. I'll do my part. We'll get through today. It's another easy 8. We'll figure it out. And I can't stress enough, like you said, how important it is to just take your time. You've earned that time. Why sit and let it? And especially in our professions, some places you might get lucky and your vacation time will roll over and will continue to build. But in our profession, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly.
They'll pay you for it. Which, I mean, the pay's not bad either. But what good does it do to earn the money that you're earning and not take time for yourself? Yeah, you're setting that money back, which is good. Everybody should set money back, and everybody should have a cushion to fall back on if anything were to happen. But at the same time, when do you draw the line in the sand? When do you finally decide that I just need some time? You know?
Yeah, like in your case right now, you have what, Monday, Tuesday off.
Yeah,
Um, and most things, especially during the summer, most things usually happen on the weekends.
right.
And it's hard, to have to give up those things, because you have to work. I was lucky enough where when I first started, of course, I had like Tuesday, Wednesday off, worked my way to a Thursday, Friday off, and finally got to a position where I had weekends off. People who have weekends off, it's hard. I mean, granted, you have sick time, but if you need to see a doctor, of course, how many doctors, you know, um, work weekend hours?
Right.
Um, you get excellent benefits, vision benefits, dental benefits, but how many doctors and optometrists and dentists work on weekends?
Yeah, my optometrist is open for like 3 hours on Saturday and nothing on Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's extremely difficult. And especially like you said, uh, having those days off are great. I'm very thankful to have 2 days off a week and not have to work 7 days a week, 12-hour days. But having Monday, Tuesday, it's difficult. With the motorcycle club that I'm in, all of our events happen on weekends because most guys have weekends off. There's no really point in trying to do anything through the week because you're going to have a lot more people trying to call off to get that time to take that ride or to do whatever event that everybody's trying to make. So, I've been very fortunate enough that I was able to save my time up, and I'm actually getting ready. What we were talking about earlier, I'm getting ready to do this 12-day stretch for work. I'm used to working 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And for a week, they're going to switch my schedule to 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that's going to be difficult for me to switch that sleep schedule and to be getting up earlier to do this week's worth of training, then turn back around, go back to working 2 to 10s, and try to fall back into that schedule while working a 12-day stretch. We're talking about taking time off. I've saved up a personal day. I'm going to burn a personal day to go out to the Flight 93 crash site in PA where the 9/11 flight went down. That's a Warthog event that we're going to go to. And I was super fortunate enough that falls on a Saturday. That Sunday, because Kristen and I are both going, and we talked about, it's going to be tough because we're going to have to get up early in the morning on Saturday. We're gonna have to meet up with our guys, ride to PA, do the ride there, then turn around and ride back. That's like a 2-hour ride one way. So we're like, man, it's gonna suck. I'm not gonna have the time off to take another day. There's no vacation spots available, and we're gonna have to do this all in one day. I was sitting at work and I found out that one of the guys that had a vacation day scheduled for that day switched his days to Sunday Mondays. So it worked out perfect for me that that vacation spot had opened up and nobody had noticed it yet. So I hurried up and I emailed my lieutenant and I said, "Hey, listen, this guy had these days off. He switched to these days off, so that means there's a vacation day open. Do you mind if I pick that up?" And luckily, he's like, "Yeah, you're more than welcome to take it. That's your spot." So I think we're gonna get a hotel room down there, so we don't have to make it all in one day. We can do the ride, stay there a night, get up whenever we have to check out of the hotel, and make that trip back. And it all ties into, like I said, how important is that time off for you? If you can take it, take it.
Exactly.
Versus having to do all that in one day and trying to do that. Now, granted, are we probably going to be short on shift? Yeah, we probably are because we're just in the profession that I work. We're lucky to be evenly staffed. It's always short shifted. It seems like. So taking that time off is extremely important. It is also important too that even to catch up on your good days. And when I mean good days, it's just a slang term for your days off, whatever your days off may be. In our workplace, if you have high seniority, you can get Saturday, Sundays, which are great, and that would be a dream spot. But when you're low on the totem pole, you just get 2 random days off, and mine just happened to be Monday, Tuesday. I also look at the time almost every Monday. I have it planned out that I know I've got the day off. So Mondays, I try not to do a whole lot in the morning. I catch up on a little bit of sleep, sleep in, or if I have things that need done, I'll come and get you, and we hang out on Mondays a lot, just for a couple hours a day. And even that little bit of time that I get to spend with you, even though it may not be a lot, is still time out of that normal routine. So if you're unable to take that time off for your mental health, just trying to do something on your days off that that you can use to escape from your work. It seems like every Monday that we meet up together, we hang out, we go to the banks because they're open on Monday, Tuesday. Obviously, you can't go on Sunday, so we head to the bank, get whatever out. We'll go have breakfast, just relax, go shopping, get our stuff done. And even though you may not have planned to do something on that day, or if you were trying to plan something, it doesn't necessarily work out. There's always something. Take that time for yourself, get out of that rut that life puts you in. And everybody goes through that rut. There's never anybody that says that they've never went through life and just not hit that life rut. You just don't understand. You get in that rut and it's hard to get out of, and it's just extremely difficult to, once you're in that rut, to try to find a way out unless you sit down and like, okay, I'm going to take this day, no matter what I do, I'm going to take some time for me, and just whatever that may be, whether it's going out and doing something or whether it's taking time to recoup and recover, whatever that may be, but definitely take that time. You've earned that time.
Exactly. Like I said, I've held several different jobs, and there was jobs that I absolutely loved, and there was jobs that I, I dreaded waking up every morning thinking, "Oh my gosh, I have to go, 8 hours," and it's just not something I wanted to do. Um, that was one thing that I never like. If I worked at a job that I didn't like, or just despised, I've never quit a job without having another job lined up.
And yeah, Stevens and I talked about that too. It's nice to have that time off of work, but at the same time, Stevens and I were talking about it. It's if you're gonna quit a job, I never quit a job without having another one lined up, like you said, because then you go that week without work and you're like, man, this was great. I recouped, I recovered. Now let's get back into it. But now you're short a week's worth of pay. So what good does that do you?
Right.
So trying to find that balance is extremely important too. And it just goes to show that, having that work ethic, it means the world. And I wanted to touch base because you said, there's days I get up and like, man, I hate that I'm going to do this. I don't want to put my uniform on today. I don't want to go in today. And it's even worse when you know that in a profession that we work, there are days that you think you're going in to do an 8-hour shift and they call you up and they're like, hey, sorry, there's only an hour left of this shift, but we're keeping you to the next shift. And there's some days you can plan on it. You're like, you know what? We're so short staffed. Might as well plan on working a 16-hour shift. And there's nothing you can do about it when they freeze you. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't unless you're quitting that day. Sorry about your luck, but your night just got fucked, and it's really hard to plan things that way, but it is what it is, and it's how it works in this day and age anymore when we're so short staffed and there's people out there that just don't want to go into work or don't have that, I don't know, mindset that it's worth going out, getting a job or whatever and trying to feed off what they can get, but you know, taking that time that's why you work that overtime because you can take it in our profession, you take it in pay or you can take it in comp time, which for people that don't understand what comp is basically vacation. You can take time and a half for that overtime, or you can take a day and a half of vacation, basically. So that's what makes it nice in our work that we're able to take that if we want it in pay, we can take it in pay, or we can take it in the time off. But it's like you said, you've earned that time. You take that time. Don't let somebody else tell you when you can take that time. You take that time.
Right. Even for people who truly love their job. I mean, those people that get up in the morning and go in a half hour early, or they truly love being at their job. Um, just like anywhere, no matter where you work, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have days where everything is sunshine and roses, and on occasion you're going to have days where nothing seems to be going right. Um, and that's the time, for those people who love their job, that's the time that you may want to, take a day off.
I do the same thing. You get going and the train gets moving, and then you completely fucking forget what you're gonna say. It means the world to me that you listen to the podcast, bringing up stuff that you've heard in previous episodes. It just goes to show that there's actually people out there that actually give a fuck what I got to say. I started this podcast just because I thought, it's gonna be cool. I'm gonna have a lot of fun with friends doing it. But to hear people, I get a text message and a message on Facebook all the time about people like, hey, that was a good episode. It's really cool that you guys can sit back and do that. And there's a lot of people that I want to get in touch with and try to record an episode with and pick people's brains, but with it's just trying to take those days off to be able to accommodate both of our schedules. But I want to say thank you so much for sitting down and doing this podcast episode with me. It means a lot, and I appreciate you supporting me and doing all this. I mean, having to set all this stuff up, I think you see now what goes into it, and it's really not that difficult to do, but just to sit down and put thoughts together enough for an hour to record on it can be difficult, trying to figure out what to talk about. But thank you so much for hanging in there with me. And
Well, like I said, I can relate to a lot of the things you say. I mean, I don't listen to your podcast just to support you because you're my son. Like I said, I actually can relate to a lot of the things that you guys talk about. It makes me feel good to know because, when I worked out there, I didn't, I mean, I knew that the people that I worked with knew what I went through on a daily basis. Um, we had the same ideas, but to know that there are people out there who know what you go through and still support you and listen to what you have to say because they can relate to what you're saying.
here's something that I wanted to touch on too before the timer runs out. How important is it? Because back when you worked there, I'm sure a lot of people told you, do your time in there and fucking leave. Don't talk about this place. How really important is it for you to talk to people that you work with? How important is it for you to talk to them about what you do at work?
It was important to me, um, because for the first couple years I worked there, it was hard for me to leave work and leave it there when I went home.
Yeah.
I mean, I carried it with me a lot, and it showed. I mean, there's things that I did that I wished I could take back. I mean, especially with you kids being so young, and like I would come home in a bad mood, and it would show. I mean, you guys could see that I was in a bad mood, and that's not how I wanted to, come off to you guys. I mean, I didn't want you to think I was mad and yelling at you all the time for no reason. Um, so yeah, to talk to somebody who understands what you're going through, and maybe they have maybe they have advice that they can give you that helped them leave work at work, and hopefully, when you do have kids of your own, that you can take some of those ideas and use them.
It's extremely hard to work in any kind of public safety profession and not talk about what happens because you see so much and you go through so much. You have to at some point just release that off your chest. And it was like I was telling you, like I said, they told me, do your time, go home, don't take that shit home with you. And I believe it's important not to take that shit home, but at the same time, it's extremely important to talk to like-minded people in that profession. So that way, you still have that outlet, but it's not you have that outlet towards friends that you work with or like I consider some of the people that I work with family. They're legit people, they're good people. They would do anything for me, I would do anything for them in a heartbeat. But at least you have that outlet to where you can burn that excess shit off your chest so you're not taking it home and you're not releasing it out on your family. And that's extremely important too, for sure, I think. But want to wrap this episode up. Thanks again, Dad, for sitting here and kicking it with me and doing the podcast. Thank you guys for your dedicated listeners out there who wait for every episode to drop. I'm still trying to figure out what day I'm going to drop episodes on. I'm trying to get more into recording podcasts ahead of time. That way I've got episodes on the back burner that are edited and ready to go. I plan on letting podcasts hit the air on Wednesday morning-ish. Gives me plenty of time to go through the podcast, edit everything out, get it to where I want it, and then send it out. So I'll tell you guys that Wednesdays are normally the days to look for the podcast to drop. Unless you get a special message or something like that from me or a special episode happens that I just can't wait to send out to you guys. But to finish up, thanks again, Dad. I really appreciate you sitting down and having a good conversation with me.
I appreciate you including me in it. I had a good time. I had a lot of fun.
We'll definitely have to do this again sometime. But until next time, guys, I'm going to send you off. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. So until the next episode, guys.
Stay wobbled.
Thanks, guys.